On August 9, 1969, one of the most gruesome murder scenes in American history was created. It took place in the Bel Air residence of actress Sharon Tate. There, her and four others were victims to merciless deaths.
When I stand on the mountain and I say, do it, it gets done. If it don't get done, then I'll move on it.
Charles Miles Mason was born, no name Maddox, on November 12, 1934, to 16-year-old Cincinnati teen Kathleen Maddox. At the time, she had ran away from home, which some may say is because of her very strict religious upbringing. For the most part, Mason spent most of his life in institutions. Since the prime age of 13, he committed a parade of crimes: apprehensions, incarcerations, escapes, and paroles. Beginning in the first grade, Charlie would recruit gullible classmates, mostly girls, to attack other students that he didn't like. Afterwards, he swore to teachers that his kids' followers were just doing what they wanted. He couldn't be held responsible for their actions. Because no one thought a 6-year-old could be capable of such manipulation, Charlie usually got out scot-free while his disciplines were punished.
On March 21st, 1967, Charles Manson was paroled from McNeil Island Prison in Washington State after doing 7 years for transporting women across state lines for the purpose of prostitution and forging checks. Upon his release, he begged prison officials to allow him to stay in prison, in which he called his home, but they were unable to comply and release Manson. Soon after, the family began to form in the Hyde-Ashburg section of San Francisco. The activities of the family included sexual orgies, hallucinogenic drug trips, and frequent sermons by Manson on the meaning of Beatles music. Manson dominated family life to the point of no one ever questioning his authority.
Whatever he believed, I would believe, and I would say, and I would spout off.
I began to get increasingly uncomfortable with the amount of control and the way in which he used them. And you could see his sense of power and control
growing. Then you substitute your own philosophy. It's like wiping the blackboard clean and then introducing your philosophy, and then you become the absolute leader.
Bit by bit, the family became one with Manson.
One of his things was to stop you during the day, and he'd put your palms up to his, and then he'd move them in any direction that he could. Or he'd make a series of faces, and then you were supposed to try to keep up with them. And the whole thing was always geared toward just complete mirroring of him.
One powerful way that Manson maintained control was through drugs, particularly LSD.
Well, we took hundreds of trips together.
The acid trips were exercises in total control.
With Charlie, he actually did almost like drug programming. I mean, he was the focal point at all times. And what seems so amazing is that he somehow, because acid is a very powerful drug, and it's like I would feel like totally out of control, and yet I would watch him and he would seem totally in control. One of the things, when I look back, I realized I didn't always see him take acid. I don't think he did. The idea was to get rid of all the conditioning, to die in yourself. So he would hold you up and say something to you. Say, see, I can see your mother on you. It's still the conditioning. You know, you haven't gotten rid of it. You're not dead yet.
Sometimes he would reenact the crucifixion when we were on LSD. And it was very realistic. I would die for you. And then the questions would begin, would you die for me?
And what was the philosophy that Manson was offering? It had begun with the notion of oneness and the power of love, but over time, it grew steadily more paranoid.
After traveling a circuitous route around the American West in an old-school bus for nearly 18 months, the family moved into a series of residences in the Los Angeles area in 1969. It was at Spawn Ranch where Manson developed his murderous plan to set off Helter Skelter. After months of planning, Manson finally set his plan in motion.
On the afternoon of August 8, 1969, Manson called Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Caspian together in addition to change of clothes, a knife, and a driver's license. They discussed the plan before all four, excluding Manson but including Charles Tex Watson, Poddington, and Old Ford. Shortly after midnight on August 9th, the group pulled into the front of the Bel Air residence of actress Sharon Tate, which she shared with her husband Roman Polanski. But at the time of the bloody massacre, he was in London working on his new film project, The Play of the Dolphin. Accompanying Tate at her residence was hairstylist Jay Sebring, writer Voltaire Farowski, and coffee heiress Abigail Folger. They weren't the only victims, though. 18-year-old Stephen Parent was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
On January 25, 1971, Los Angeles, California, cult leader Charles Manson is convicted along with followers Suzanne Atkins, Leslie Van Houten, and Patricia Krenwinkel of the brutal 1969 murders of actress Sharon Tate and 6 others. The trial of another defendant, Charles Tex Watson, was delayed by extradition proceedings, but he was likewise found guilty and sentenced to death. But in 1972, the California Supreme Court abolished the death penalty in California, and Manson and his followers' death sentences were reduced to life imprisonment.